All right, and we are live, you all. Welcome to CAG Chat. I'm your host, Sherman, and I'm joined by my amazing co-hosts, Donick, Derek, Tanya, and Levon. Today, we're wrapping up our special election series with a light yet impactful episode. We've got a lot to unpack, and as we reflect on this journey and the conversations that we've had, um, let's just say we'll speak with Keith Washington and his attorney today, Jonathan Newton, to explore injustices in the legal system. And later we'll have an insightful interview with Calvin Hawkins, who's running for county executive, to hear what his vision for Prince George's County is. And before we dive in, we want to take a moment to thank all the candidates who allowed us and you, our audience, a glimpse into their lives and plans. And for those of us who gave us the runaround, kick rocks. The audience this platform. Audience, this platform is about accountability and transparency. We aren't for play. We're proud of what we accomplished, and we thank you for your support. And I'll go ahead and pass it over to Levon, who is going to give us some hot topics today. Go ahead, Levon. Thank you.
Oh my! Thank you, Sherman. I was not prepared for that. I'm so proud of you. All right, hot topics. I need a moment. All right. So everybody knows that Prince George's County has been abuzz with the discussions on the snow removal from the storm. What's it been now? Almost 2 weeks ago. We had some snow this weekend. And there was a hearing yesterday with the county council where the director of DPWT addressed the council and the community on things that were of concern that could have been done better. And so we will now roll the video message from the interim county executive, Ms. Tara Jackson.
Is it playing? I don't hear it.
I can't hear.
Yeah, me neither. Let me see.
Well, while Sherman is working on the audio, one of the comments that was made by the DPWT director was that we have narrow streets in Prince George's County.
So what?
Now
they went from fat to narrow?
Right. We've always had narrow streets in the newer communities of Prince George's County. And that's been a complaint by home buyers. It's been a complaint by the fire department, the police department, even the street I live on. I live in a cul-de-sac, and we had to have emergency vehicles come for me and for my mother-in-law. And, it takes up the whole street. The fire truck, there's no double parking. It's just there. And so I thought that was interesting because we've had blizzards and we've had snow removal, and he was talking about the 10-wheel vehicles and the 8-wheel vehicles, or the 6-wheel vehicles rather, that can't get through the streets. And my question is, well, what happened to the trucks that were being used before to get through the streets? I found, and in all transparency, I did not watch the hearing because it has been a very troubling week, and I just could not take in more shallow, superficial, misleading information. You use words like quality improvement, quality control. Well, my question is, what happened to the old trucks? At one point, we had a contractual agreement between HOA landscapers, who also typically do snow removal, and the state or the county. And they would plow the snow coming into a community so that there would not need to be another plowing by the county or the state. And it makes sense because the plow has to come into a neighborhood to clean. So why not just clean the thoroughfare that is perpendicular or parallel to that community. Just made more sense. What happened to the trucks that we bought several years ago? Were they not big trucks? Another question that's come up is for the sake of discussion.
And here are several of my key findings.
We've had a lot of new communities to come on board in the last couple of years.
We had sufficient.
Go ahead.
So one of the questions I would have had is, do we have 400, for the sake of discussion, if we had 400 streets the last time we had a snow, and we've added 300 streets, and now we have 700 streets, was that not taken into consideration as you did your preparedness for the winter conditions, for the possibility of snow? Do we have vehicles to break down? Do we have vehicles that are out of commission? Like, there's so many other questions that should have been asked. And even in Ms. Jackson's videotaped statement, they had no press.
I want to get ready to play it.
To it, she didn't address any of that.
I heard from many of you about the frustration caused by icy roads that lingered for days. While many areas were cleared successfully and on time, there were some neighborhoods in the county where our response fell short. As I committed to do, I conducted a review of our response, and here are several of my key findings. First, we had sufficient salt supply, but the type of salt we used wasn't strong enough for the sustained frigid temperatures that we experienced that first week of January. Second, our snow track system didn't work well, and we didn't have enough inspectors on the roads. Lastly, we didn't have enough emergency equipment for the severity of the storm we experienced. I want to assure you that we've taken steps to address these gaps. After reviewing our snow operations, we've already made improvements, including fixing the PGC Track Snow portal to provide accurate, real-time updates on plowing and salting progress, purchasing additional, stronger de-icing compound to strategically use in sustained frigid temperatures, and strengthening oversight to ensure quality control and consistency across all our neighborhoods. Thankfully, we saw the benefit of those changes this past weekend. Moving forward, we are focused on increasing staffing and equipment resources for severe snow and ice emergencies to handle both primary and residential streets more effectively. And we will be conducting additional staff trainings to improve quality control and efficiency. Prince Georgians, we are committed to ensuring that every part of our county receives the level of service that you expect and deserve during winter weather events. I thank you for your feedback and for partnering with us to make these improvements.
Well, I can say my street wasn't plowed when I got home.
So I would like to comment real quick on a couple of those, since that is my background. I find it very difficult to perceive why they would not have the proper type of salt to salt the streets. We've been doing this in this county for a long time. This is not the first time that we've had inclement weather. We used to use something called bluestone back in the school system. It was a bluish kind of salt, and it was very effective. That was probably 5-10 years ago. They may have improved it by now. I don't know. Salt is salt. I'm not the manufacturer, but there is the proper salts out there. Not having enough inspectors. Do we not have enough inspectors to go out because the budget, the financial situation in the budget is not yielding to us hiring people in those positions that would be able to go out there and handle the snow emergency plan? I don't know. It's just a question to be asked. And to say that you bounce back the last little snow that we had, that wasn't that significant of a snow to test whether your plan that you just spoke of is going to be effective. And I'm not trying to be funny or nasty or critical. I'm concerned because having that background myself, probably the best thing would be to say is, hey, we dropped the ball on this one. We all are human. We do make mistakes. You dropped the ball. I do want to make one more comment in terms of narrow streets and stuff. We're supposed to have civil engineers working with the developers of these neighborhoods, and the county
Well, Derek, if you
exec.
think about it, a lot of these roads are, just about as old as the county. So,
Wait a minute, Thurman. Wait a minute.
yeah.
I'm talking about
Exactly.
new communities that we're getting ready to build.
Yeah, but the new communities, they're wide enough. These are some of the older, more established communities that they were having a problem with driving through,
Okay,
that they were talking about.
just got you. Point well taken, but food for thought for the future. When we start to build our communities and put housing up and whatever it is, it would be it would behoove the people who are sitting at the table partaking in this project to make sure that all of these things are crossed in terms of the streets, the narrow and the wideness of the street. All of these things have to be discussed prior to laying the cement, because once you lay that cement and the cement dries, it is what it is. So I would just suggest to be more proactive. Maybe in the end of September, early October, you need to start having your emergency plan meetings with all of the departments that will be involved in that process. That's just my 2 cents.
Thank you so much. Not 2 cents, Derek. It's critical that we all have, we bring our perspectives to the table, and we don't owe any clarification on what we say. None of this has malintent. We are here to inform, to critique, and to applaud. So next hot topic, and we should extend an invitation to Madam Acting Interim County Executive Jackson or the Director of DPWT to come on and have another conversation. Maybe we can do something and ask some questions. All right, next hot topic is the grant openings, grant opportunities with the Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council. The FY25 Community Grants Program portal is now open. The website is pgahc.org, and just search on there for grants. The deadline for all categories is January 31st, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. There are 3 community grant program opportunities. One is an artist fellowship, and that's for individuals only. The second is county arts. That's for nonprofit organizations only. And arts and education is the third one, and that is for the individuals, organizations, and K-12 schools. This project-based funding is available for all eligible artists, arts, cultural organizations, community groups, and other educational institutions residing or providing services in Prince George's County. And I'm sure residing also means your business address needs to be in Prince George's County. All right, so applications are only accepted online. So again, go to the Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council website at pgahc.org. I'm going to also make a call. I'm going to switch that number 3 with number 4, Sherman. So number 3 hot topics for the night is we're asking for nonprofit organizations or community service leaders to let us know if you want to come on and have your work featured in one of our CAG chats. We know that it takes every aspect of a community to make things better. And so we want to celebrate the work that you're doing, highlight opportunities that you have for the community, or showcase someone who is affiliated with your organization who's gone over and beyond. We don't have a list of criteria. Just send us a message on Facebook or email, right? Because we don't have Facebook DM. But anyway, reach out to Sherman Hardy on Facebook, and we will be glad to feature you, your organization.
Yeah, and it has to be legitimate work.
Right, legitimate work. And so the last topic, and it's hot only because this person is hot. She fueled not just Prince George's County, but the DMV, and I would dare say the country. On Monday, we lost Dr. Renee Allen, known affectionately as the People's MC. And the tributes to Renee are just flooding everyone's social media timelines, and they are definitely filled with love and adoration and gratitude. And so we just wanted to take time to acknowledge Dr. Allen, who is a former veteran, a retired veteran. She is a philanthropist. She's been all over the place hosting events from the most intimate to the largest of galas. She has walked runways probably across the country, doing modeling. She has been a mentor. She is a sister to many, just an all-around awesome woman. She loved the Lord. And so those of us who are believers in the gospel of Jesus Christ believe that her work here on earth was completed, and that she will hear, "Well done, thy good and faithful servant." So love you, Renee. Appreciate you, Renee. And God bless the family and all those who know and love her. That's it.
Oh, okay. Yes. And did you have another hot topic, or that was all of them?
Yeah, I wanted to make hers the last one.
I understand. Well, thank you so much, Navana. That was a very lovely tribute. We appreciate that. And also, I'm going to go ahead and play the video of making an exoneree so that you can actually get a better understanding of who our next guest is and what they're going to be talking about today.
This is my daughter, Kayla. She's a 19-year-old student and my sunshine.
This is my mom. Her name is Stacy. I guess I would call her my rock. When I was a kid, I would call him my best friend. We did everything together. He played baseball, so we went to his game at night. We would run around the house, and I would be on his back, and we'd be chasing my mom, or I'd be in my mom's arms, and he'd be chasing us. He was my best friend, pretty much.
You just never know how, in an instant, your entire life changes.
Two Marlowe Furniture delivery men were shot. One of them died while dropping off bed rails. It happened in January 2007 at the Accokeek home of Prince George's County Police Corporal Keith Washington. He was Deputy Director of Homeland Security. Upstairs, 3 to 5 shots were fired. 22-year-old Brandon Clark died. His partner and cousin, Robert White, was critically wounded, but later testified against Washington at his trial, saying an argument resulted in an unprovoked shooting. Washington was convicted in 2008 of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of first-degree assault and use of a handgun. He was sentenced to and is serving a 45-year prison sentence.
My dad shouldn't be in prison. He protected his family.
This call is from
Keith Washington,
an inmate at the Maryland Correctional Facility.
I look down the hallway, and White is sticking his head out of Caleb's bedroom. And when I see him, I say, "Hey, what are you doing in there? Come out of there." Clark is like, he said something, and before I know it, the guy hit me in the back of the head. And then White punched me from the front. I'm thinking right now, this is how people get killed in their own home. White's on one side, Clark's on the other side. He kicked my arm so hard, like I was ducked down, like in a squatting position, covering up my head, that it broke my watch and knocked my watch off my wrist. Now, it's life or death. And I know that my wife is there, my 6-year-old daughter is there. When I pull my gun, I'm squatted down. They're on top of me, 12 inches from me.
As I'm coming down the hallway, I'm looking up. I get here, I go up to come, I think, okay, they're beating him, these two guys. He's in the middle, they're on either side of him. And I think, oh my God, I need to help him. And I start to go up, and then I think, no, I need to get her out of here. So I step back, turn, and as I'm coming back this way, that's when I hear the shots. And then I just go back through here, grab her, and then grab the phone, and then go out the garage door. They were very large, two very large men, and Keith was not a large guy. If they had gotten his weapon, I think they would have killed him. They may have killed him anyway. They were way bigger than he was. He was unable to fight back. He was unable to run. There was just no way for him to get away from them. If he had not had his gun on him that night, it's very possible that he could have been killed.
Washington's account placed them in very close proximity, including that one was on each side of him, beating him as he was crouched down. Mr. White's account placed them at some significant distance from Mr. Washington when he started shooting at them. The ballistics laboratory testing demonstrated that there was some gunpowder residue that was deposited on the entrance wound. And in fact, you really cannot posit that kind of gunpowder residue from a distant gunshot.
Keith's description of where the shots were fired matches where the shell casings were located. None of Robert White's story lines up with the evidence. He has Keith in the master bedroom doorway firing the shots. There are no shell casings found there. When they did the ballistics check and they did the gun residue test, and they found that the tip of the barrel was a distance of like 3 to 12 inches, which is more consistent with them being right up on Keith when that shot was fired.
He had swelling underneath his eyes and swelling in the lips. And from my experience, yes, he was hit more than once.
Did he look like he had been in a fight?
Yes.
Once he was being assaulted, then he had every right to use lethal force, particularly in his home, since his wife and daughter were downstairs, in order to defend himself. Washington being in jail is just a travesty.
Keith should not be sitting in jail for 40 some odd years of his life. I've handled a number of homicide investigations where individuals who committed murders have not received half that time. I also believe that there were some issues with regards to the way the state's attorney's office conducted themselves. And the fact that this did have some political undertones for their office as well. Mr. Wright, had definitely had political aspirations as well during that particular point in time.
This issue's been around for a long time. PG County has had a lot of reporting done on it over the years. And I can see even back then where this could have been a issue that a politically minded prosecutor might want to jump on.
I think it became pretty clear that the prosecutor had an axe to grind. The prosecutor was looking to make some perhaps political hay to further their own career.
He's been in prison for 12 years.
I guess in the beginning I tried to shield her from all of this craziness. So tried not to talk about it a lot and just tried to let her have a childhood, really.
When I was younger, I was in Girl Scouts, so they'd be like daddy-daughter dances, and I wouldn't go because there's no one to take me. He didn't see me at graduation. He didn't, see me at prom.
He is probably one of the most kind-hearted people. He was a police officer so that he could make a difference. Kayla said to me, one night, not long after he was sentenced, we told the truth and Dad still didn't come home. What do we do now? What do you say to that? That kind of sums it up for me. What do we do now? And I think I said something like, we keep fighting until he comes home. And so here we are, still fighting.
Well, that was very powerful story. This is an Army veteran and a hometown, person. Jonathan hasn't joined us yet with his client, but we are definitely going to wait for them, to come on. But the gist of the conversation of what they wanted to discuss with us was about to bring awareness to Keith Washington and his incident, but also to discuss some of the concerns with accountability and issues with the case. So what happened is that hold on a second, let me see something. Well, until they come on, we can go ahead and get started with Calvin Hawkins. We'll go ahead and play that. And then
is he running late?
yeah, it appears so. Yeah,
I thought he may have texted you. Okay.
We want to really start that and then interrupt it, or do we have an ETA?
I will reach out to him if you all can go ahead and discuss amongst, and then we'll bring him on. Sorry about that, everybody, but we will definitely
No, it's okay. Things happen.
Yeah.
Did we have any other issues that we wanted to bring forth from the week, Tanya? Just in a
well, okay, well, let me just bring this can fit into accountability. I had a chance to watch the school board meeting from last Thursday, and one of the things that the school board is proposing to do is move 3 school board meetings to the county administration building.
Mm-hmm.
Why? The claim is, like they always say, my constituents have said that coming out here to Sasser is far. Okay, how many? Are they really going to come if it's at, this was the other thing. And transportation is an issue. Well, there's no buses leaving the county administration building at 10 o'clock at night, so you still got a transportation issue. What about the people out in Baden? So now you've created a situation for them to have to come all the way out to Central County. Just no thought behind it. It was clear, no thought behind it. But they claim they're going to go ahead and do it because they had a legal vote. We're going to get to the legal vote in a minute. But in the board meeting, the question was asked, what is the cost? What is it going to cost us to move these meetings? And the response was, it's not going to cost us anything because the council said that they will pay the utilities and pay for the guards that they have to have that night. That's a cost. And that's still a cost to taxpayers. An extra cost that's not needed.
Do they ordinarily have guards at the Sasser building?
They already would have guards, but we can't use our security people. You have to use the Sasser people.
Excuse me, where did you say they were moving the meeting to?
To the county administration building.
The Curry building.
The Wayne Curry building.
They were doing that in order to, kind of provide a different, another area, the opportunity to have a meeting. Yeah. And I, so it's kind of, and personally, I wish the South County would get a lot of love when they hold meetings because nobody ever liked to do meetings down south. But if they move it to a central location, and I don't see
That's
the
not
problem with it.
central. First of all, that's not central.
Mm-hmm.
Tell that to somebody who's in Baden. That's not central. Tell that to somebody
Well,
who's way
it's
out.
not going anything from Baden or.
Well, then
central.
again, my don't say you're doing it because it puts it a place that's central for everybody. That's not true. Don't move it when when you look at the logistics, it's going to cost. It's going to cost somebody because somebody has to pay the guards at the county administration building. Then the other question is, so what is it that these other people are saying? Why do they want to come to why do they want the meetings moved? Are they going to really come to the meetings? Are they really going to come? If they're only coming to testify, which is the only thing that we do, we really
should allow it to be virtually.
It can be done virtually and save us a lot of money. So that's my problem with the lack of thinking with so many members on this board, the lack of common sense, just common sense. So they went ahead and voted, talking about this is a pilot. Well, any pilot that I've ever put together, I had a document and a presentation and data to show why the pilot should be done. You don't say, I'm just going to pilot an idea and figure out if it works. That's called waste. That's the definition of waste. So, but anyway, y'all need to watch that. But getting back to why they don't understand that this is a violation of the Opens Meeting Act. Now, I also want to let you know that the board attorney was there. I didn't know that, but the board attorney was at the meeting. I guess the cat had his tongue because he didn't say anything. And so they had the parliamentarian asking the legal questions while the attorney was sitting right there. And the attorney never interjected. So, and our attorneys are Shipley Horn. But here's why it's a violation of the Opens Meeting Act. According to the Opens Meeting Act, if during a discussion, a board comes up with an idea, and it's a result of the discussion, and they decide we want to act on it, they can act on it. And I think Keith is on. They can act on it and there's no violation. But if what they're acting on has already been out in the public domain, it has to be placed on the board, on the agenda, and the public has to have the opportunity to comment on it. This was in the public domain because the former board member, Shayla Adams Stafford, had already said, well, we've discussed this before, y'all, and I've talked to some other people about it. They've already said that constituents are the people driving this, so this is already in the public. And therefore, it should have been an agenda item. So it is, and Pam Boozer Struthers tried to explain that to them, but you had people talking over her, very disappointed. And Dr. Moss, you told me that you were going to do the sensible thing, and talking over your colleagues is not sensible. So they're going forward with it, even though it's a violation of Opens Meeting Act. I'm going to end because Keith Washington is here and we're not going to hold you up. We can talk about that more later.
Okay. Let's see. Keith, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time, and I know you are definitely here to set the record straight and also, share your story so that others can be made aware of it. I understand that your attorney will be joining us shortly, but I'll just go ahead and ask you a couple of questions if you don't mind. Did I set him up to let me make sure I got this audio correct? I apologize. One moment.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah. Hello, Keith. Can you hear me?
I think he's still frozen.
Yeah.
Hey Siri, call Jonathan. Calling Jonathan Moyer for my case overturn Newton.
Wait, he's trying to call this attorney, but yeah, so
Well,
yeah.
Okay, there he is.
Jonathan, hello.
I think we see Keith now.
I'm sorry, Keith. Can you hear me?
Can you hear us, Keith? I don't know if he can hear us.
Yeah, but he's not muted. Keith, can you hear us?
Can you hear us? Here, let me hit him in the chat. I think he's still.
Keith.
Hello? Okay, Tanya, you can go ahead and finish with what you were talking about.
Okay, yeah, and Keith, I don't know if you can hear us, but just join in when you can get your audio. But again, so we just need to watch that school board meeting, because right now it is going to cost us. One, our county council is already, we already have a deficit, y'all, a deficit. So there's no need to incur this additional cost when we have $170 million deficit. And for what? We gain nothing. If we want people to, if people want to testify and they want to testify and be seen at the board meeting, that can be an audio thing. We have the technology to do it. So there's no excuse of us expensing money. It is very irresponsible of this board to call something a pilot and not even have a piece of paper to show it's legitimate. Not even a piece of paper to share with the public. I do not think anybody, any of those board members, will go on their job, tell their employer, I want to do a pilot based on some calls that you're telling us you got in from constituents, and never, ever, ever put a dollar amount to it. Never, ever map out a plan of how the logistics around it. I don't think any of you all would take that to your employer and do it. So why do you think you can do it with our tax dollars? It's just asinine. And it makes no sense. And then I'm looking at the number of policies. Who changes policies in the middle of the school year when you're trying to operate? Your operating procedures, you're changing them almost weekly. It makes no sense. It is just tomfoolery at this point. And at this point, I have no confidence in this board. I'm just coming out and say it. I have no confidence in this board, because what I saw last night in that board meeting was just ridiculous. There was 2 presentations that were very inappropriate that were allowed. One was the president of the teachers union, who don't even live in this county. But anyway, she was given time to give a presentation about having open negotiations for their contracts. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a regulation that says what the board has to do. A regulation attached to a law that says what the board has to do. And they're given a presentation as to why the board should break the law. And then to hear a question from a board member with 2 letters in front of his name, a title, DR, in front of your name, and you're going to ask the question, what is the consequences of breaking the law?
Whoa. What's the second thing that happened?
What's the severity? What's the severity of us breaking the law is the question.
Right. What's the second thing that happened?
Second thing, which was very inappropriate. The state's attorney gets up and not even this is another where they violated their own policy. A parent that I know of was not allowed to testify that night because she was told they had more than 15 people to testify. Now the policy is you get 15 people, and after that you can only go beyond 15 if you vote to extend the public comment. No vote took place. It was just unilaterally done by the chair. I guess he thinks he's the CEO of the board. Don't work like that, sir.
Wow.
Don't work like that. So she was allowed to get up, the state's attorney, and give testimony that was totally inappropriate, saying, I wrote a letter in support of having open negotiations. You need to be fighting crime. Or that's what you're saying you're doing. You need to be worried about prosecuting people. And the thing that really got to me was because in the environment that we have now, where you have people that can go to the extreme, what if something were to happen in these negotiations and it ends up being a matter that comes before the state's attorney's office? Just sit up here and testify. Just inappropriate, but more inappropriate that the chair just let her do it without following the proper rules. This is just ridiculous. It has just gotten worse with this board. And all this mess about having elected people because we listen to our constituents. Sometimes you listen too much. You listen, but you don't think. It's okay to listen, but put some thinking behind some of that stuff that's been given to you.
Right. So what I can't even speak. My thought about what I'm seeing is not only is this country going backwards, Prince George's County is going backwards. This reminds me of the reasons why we had to go to an appointed board back in 2001. And that might be a sore spot for some people, but y'all got to pay attention. And corruption is corruption. It's like sin. There's no weightiness to sin. Either you believe that there's sin and all sin is created equal, or you don't. And I believe that whether it's illegal or unethical, it is corruption. And the way these people are operating, if you would do messiness with little things, then what else are you doing that we cannot see and we do not hear?
Exactly. Oh, this is another thing. Now, now I didn't hear it, but a person that was actually watching the board meeting, the night the day was live, there was, I guess, some frustration on the part of a board member. And at the end of the meeting, you could hear them, swearing, saying a cuss word about how frustrated they were. Guess what? It's been edited out. So how can we now trust our videos?
Wow.
The integrity of that video is compromised because it was edited. So how can we trust that you may not edit something else?
I mean, they didn't have to cut it. They could have just bleeped the profane word and called it a day.
Exactly.
No,
the video was cut. I watched it 3 times to try to see if it happened. And the person who did see it said, oh, no, that was said. So now you're editing videos. How do we trust you? What else are you going to edit that you don't want us to hear? Because mistakes happen.
Almost like we need to take our own camera and record
the whole thing.
Meetings ourselves.
Exactly.
I just
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah,
I was invited to join you, I guess.
we got it.
My name's Keith Washington. I've served 17 years as a Prince George County police officer. I served 20 years in the United States Army, right? And been a citizen of this county for 36 years, right? And I was invited on, my lawyer called me. He said, hey, man, would you like to go in here tonight and inform the people of a few issues vis-a-vis county government, the county executive's office and the state attorney's office. It is shabbily run, and criminal conduct has been committed by several state's attorneys in the last 3 administrations. And we have the evidence, the documents, we have statements, we've even traced money that changed hands. And
but before we get into that, because I definitely have some questions that I want to ask you, Keith. And again, thank you so much for joining us. We played your video, making of an exoneree, and it was a very difficult story to watch. You know, seeing from then to now, and hearing the story of how things went down. And as you say, you served both as a police officer and a U.S. Army veteran. How do those experiences shape your sense of duty and responsibility to others?
Well, first of all, let me just give you the backstory about my life. I was homeless as a 15-year-old. My family broke up. I wasn't homeless. My father, ran off, and my mother and my 3 sisters and I was the man of the house at 13. I had a job since I was 13. My sisters went to live with my relatives, grandmother, aunts, other cousins, and my mother had a nervous breakdown. I had to commit her. Had to commit her to sane asylum, and I was a teenager in the 10th. I was going from 9th grade going to the 10th grade, and so I slept in an abandoned car. Her and I did for a while until she had a nervous breakdown, and we stayed at the shelter off and on. But anyway, I was just going to school making D's and F's. I was in the 10th grade. I had a job at Pizza Hut and throwing for the post in the morning. So that was my job since I was, 13 years old. And so anyway, in the 10th grade, when all this tragedy happened, I was still going to school, but I was just going to school in the morning to get the free breakfast. I'd get out of the car, go get free breakfast. And around my 12th grade year, like I said, I had D's and F's on my transcript. I knew I wasn't graduating, but I didn't know what I was going to do next. And a neighbor, a guy who lived on the dead-end street, saw me as a kid sleeping in the car every night. So he called the principal and said, hey, there's one of your students out here in the car. They came out there and got me. And they said, what have you been doing? I said, hey, well, this is what I've been, kind of embarrassed or whatever, little dirty kid. And so they said, hey, go in here. They let me come to school every morning, shower or whatever, brought me clothes or whatever. I felt really embarrassed because I didn't want anybody to know. But about a month before graduation, I saw 2 friends of mine walking, Charles Shelvin and Dexter Hill. I said, hey, man, where y'all going? I was sleeping in that car, and they would just walk by the car. It's a dead-end road. And they said, man, we're going to join the Army. I jumped up. I said, wait a minute, I'm going with you. Just like that. Just like that. Never heard of the Army day in my life. And went with them. And 15 minutes later, talking to a recruiter, signed up. He, took us downtown to take the ASVAB test. And he said, where you live? I'm coming to pick you up Monday morning, And I was 5'2" and 106 pounds in the 12th grade. That's how malnourished I was. And when I took the physical for the Army Induction Center, the doctor told the recruiter that I was too small. You had to be 5'5" and 125 pounds. That was the minimum height and the minimum weight, 5'5" and 125 pounds. So the recruiter came back in the room. He told me, so the doctor told me that. I didn't really, that was the story of my life. Didn't know what I was going to do next. And the recruiter came in and took the physical and scratched out 5'2", 106, and he put in 5'6", 126, and gave it back to the doctor and said, that's his height and weight right now. And so I went on through with the basic training. They sent me to Korea after basic training. And when I got to Korea as an 18-year-old, keep in mind, I didn't have a high school diploma. he asked me, did I have a high school diploma? I jumped ahead. I told him, yeah. And he asked me where I live. I gave my grandmother's address about 50 miles away. And he said, we'll be out there to get you Saturday morning. So I hitchhiked out to my grandmother's house at Friday night. And she woke up my grandfather. She said, Henry, get in here, that boy at the door. It's 3 in the morning. And I came in. I said, Big Mama, I'm going in the army in the morning. She didn't know what to say. My grandfather like, what boy? I said, yeah, I'm going in the army in the morning. They're gonna be here around 5 o'clock. So we sit there on the couch all night, me and my 2 grandparents, my grandmother, my grandfather, and she cried. And the recruiter came in a van rather, with about 10 other people in it. And I jumped in there and hugged me and kissed me. And that was all off to build my life, right? Whatever it was gonna be. Finished basic training, got sent to Korea as an 18-year-old. When I got to Korea, one of the first sergeants, they pulled me aside. It was like 7 or 8 first sergeants in there, and there's about 30 of us getting off the plane. And they said, Washington, stand over here. I said, over there. He said, listen, you get back on the plane, you're going back to America. So I didn't know why. He said, I'm looking at your GT score, and I'm sending you to be a linguist. So they sent me back to Presidio, California to learn Hanguk Korean. So I spent 9 months in California, learned Korean fluently as an 18-year-old private, back to Korea to interpret for MI, Military Intelligence Unit. And that was my start in the military for 2 years. And came back from that, and I tell you a ton of experiences in that. But anyway, came back from that and got stationed in Fort Polk, Louisiana. And I don't know if you remember, Ronald Reagan had fired all the air traffic controllers.
Traffic controllers, yeah.
So in 1981, the Army put out a message that if you want to re-enlist, you could re-enlist for air traffic controllers since there was none in the country. And they pay you a $20,000 bonus, which was a godsend. Never seen that, heard or seen that much money in my life. Now I'm 20 years old, but I had a Alabama redneck racist first sergeant at Fort Polk. And he said, Washington, if you want to re-enlist, you're going to re-enlist for the infantry and not for air traffic controller, which I didn't know that I could buck the system, which you couldn't back then. But so obviously any black soldier that wanted that $20,000 bonus, they wouldn't allow it in the Army. The Army I was in at Fort Polk in Louisiana. So I got out, went to college, got my GED, went to college, joined ROTC, graduated, went back in the Army, retired as a colonel. So from a homeless kid to retiring as a colonel in the Army is a testament of what my mother and my grandmothers put into me, right?
Yes.
Now, as far as this story,
Yeah, and that's a very compelling story, and I thank you for sharing that. Can you walk us through the events of January 24th, 2007? From your perspective, what went through your mind during that incident?
Well, I ordered some bed rails for my wife. It's on the website. Matter of fact, Georgetown did an investigation. Well, you guys have seen the video. So
Yes, you played the video.
Okay, the website and the video. I ordered bed rails for my wife. People showed up. 2 people showed up. I assumed they were Marlowe furniture delivery people, and I let them in the house, not knowing that one of them was a registered sex offender and he was high on cocaine when I let him in the house. Not knowing that neither one of them worked for Marlowe's, according to Marlowe's. When we ended up in a civil case, and that they had been running a scam with a guy in the warehouse who was a warehouse manager, where he would get his friends to deliver furniture who didn't work for the company because he didn't have to pay him as much, and he kept the rest of the money. And then they were doing burglaries of people's houses. They'd get in people's houses to see what was going on, and then drop the stuff off, leave, and they've already been inside and cased the house. They had done 2 burglaries before they got to my house, right? I was the 3rd homeowner whose house they were cased and burglarized. The other 2 had been burglarized. So state attorneys knew that. Glenn Ivey knew that when they prosecuted me, that they didn't work for Marlowe's and that they had burglarized several houses before mine. When I let them in my house, unbeknownst to all this stuff, one guy tried to distract me upstairs in my bedroom. We put up the bed rails. I said, where's your boy? Where's your friend? He said, don't worry, I got him, shorty. Well, I know how my house sounds, so I can hear the creaking in another room on the floor. The floor creaks in my daughter's bedroom. And when I said, where's your boy? I looked down the hallway and he stuck his head out. Now, my 6-year-old daughter's, that's her bedroom. My 6-year-old baby, my youngest child. And I said, what are you doing in there? Come out of there. And he stuck his head out. I said, come out of there, come out of there. And as he's coming out, I'm walking toward him, and the other guy's walking behind me. And when I got toward him, like I said, I did not know that he was on cocaine, according to the toxicology report done by the state's attorney's office.
Right.
That they had his toxicology report done by Dr. Muhammad Khan, who tested positive for cocaine the night of the shooting in my home. And so,
and how did the revelation of Robert White's criminal background and dubious employment status of a delivery man influence your defense, particularly, because I know that came up. How did they actually uncover that?
Well, the state's attorney's investigators uncovered it. Lieutenant Charlie Walls and about 5 other investigators uncovered it and gave it to Glenn Ivey and said, hey, we're your investigators, but this is the deal with this guy, that he has done several burglaries before he got to Mr. Washington's house. And he has been convicted of those 2 other sexual assaults in burglaries he did down in South Carolina. So a total of 4 burglaries he had done, 2 down in South Carolina and 1 in Virginia and 1 in I believe, DC. And so I was number 3. But my point is the other 2 victims he had assaulted in their home. And for those crimes, he spent 10 years in prison. That they hid that, Ivy hid that from the jury, from the public, and from the court, from the judge.
And how do you feel? How did that make you feel when you found out that Robert White's criminal history and the irregularities with the delivery were either downplayed or withheld?
Well, it's just blatant corruption. That's the only way to put it about it. When people openly lie as politicians in order to deceive the public, create a false narrative in order to get votes and act like they're actually doing something, right? Then this has been an 18-year cover-up, right? This happened in January 2024. It is now January 07. This is now January 2025. That's 18 years ago. An 18-year cover-up. Yeah. Every state's attorney, Ivy, has at least 25 different law enforcement experts, law professors, former state's attorneys, detectives on the Prince George's County Police Department who investigated the Georgetown Law School have all said the same thing, that this case was falsified, period, exclamation point, and it was falsified, as we believe, for a $400 million shakedown. Now, because 7 days after the shooting was January 24th, 07. On January 31st, a lawyer named Michael Winkleman filed a $400 million lawsuit against me in Prince George's County for, for shooting a guy unnecessarily, as they say, or illegally. They could only go through with that lawsuit if I was convicted. Unknown to everybody that nobody hired this guy. He was not representing Robert White or the dead guy, Marilyn Clark, a son, Brandon, who died, that he had forged their names on a lawsuit. And that Glenn Ivey was telling the Office of Law to settle the lawsuit with this guy, Winkleman. Michael Winkleman is his name.
Wow.
So we have that. That's a crime, ladies and gentlemen. So the only way they could go through the lawsuit is that I had to be convicted. So they withheld all this evidence, lied about it, and everything else. And so people don't know the massive amount of corruption in there. Now, Angela also Brooks was aware of it too when she took office in 2010 after Ivy, because about 12 different people briefed her, including members of her staff, that the evidence was falsified. And she did nothing about it for 8 years but cover it up and lie about it to the media and to the public, right? Unknown to us that Jolene Ivey got Angela also Brooks a $70,000 raise through legislation. And I think it was House bill, you can look it up, you can Google it, the House bill that Jolene Ivey sponsored that got Angela also Brooks a raise to $220,000 a year salary, something like that, from $150 to $220. And everybody believes that was hush money for her to cover up now, Angela Alsobrooks does not even live in Jolene Ivy's district. But Jolene Ivy, as a state delegate, then goes to Annapolis and passes one piece of legislation for one person to get a $70,000 raise. So when you add that up over a 7-8 year period, that's over $500,000 extra into her pocket.
So Keith, let me ask you something. Is your attorney coming on?
Yeah, I'm texting him now. Hold on a second.
Okay. Yeah, because it would be good if he can give more history of what's in the legal record.
Yeah, absolutely. There is some questions that I wanted to ask his attorney as well.
Okay.
But definitely Keith, while we have you,
I think it needs to be said that we appreciate Mr. Washington coming on to share his story, and we want his attorney to be present so that any specific legal questions can be answered. We are a platform providing opportunity. We are not trying anyone who is being named. We do not have documents handy at this moment. So we just want to be clear that, this was not any prepared conversation with Mr. Washington.
Right. It was not. And let me say this. I speak plainly and clearly. And if I'm lying, you can sue me for libel. Their website names names and dates and people, right? And what they did.
That's something that we say.
And so please sue me. I would love that.
That's my favorite line.
Please sue me.
If I'm lying, sue me.
Then I can get you in a deposition and get you to answer some real questions that have been hidden.
Exactly.
Can we please give the website while we're waiting?
It's One Innocent Man, all one word, ONE, oneinnocentman.org. And I encourage you to send it out to everyone in your social media group or email list, because Ms. Bradeboy has it now. Georgetown sent her a 39-page letter of the investigation and outlines it everything from A to Z. It reads like a movie. Who did what, when, where, and for what motivation, and really how much money they received.
Now the document is on the website.
That 39-page document is Ms. Bradeboy has it. It's confidential between the lawyers, but we're gonna release it. Should Ms. Bradeboy see the law allows Ms. Bradeboy to overturn my case immediately through what's called the conviction integrity law that she so freely promotes in her office, that she established a conviction integrity unit in her office. But she's been holding on to this case for couple of years now and not enacting the law, which only allows Marilyn Mosby used it regularly in Baltimore to free innocent people.
Yeah, she definitely touts it as part of her campaign for county executive right now.
I would suggest you asked her what adults has she used it on? What adult case has she used it on?
I was going to ask her, but she refused to do the interview with us. But so unfortunately, the world may never know the answer to that question. I definitely had some concerns about the public integrity unit and also
I think it's a smoke screen. That's my true belief, and I'll just say that because these politicians, they just lie. That's all they do. And it was really crazy is Black people who fought and died and marched for these people to go to law school and get these jobs. They could care less. They got it, and they act like they got there by themselves, and they act like they don't owe an obligation to the people and to the community and to us in general, right? And to our ancestors who sacrificed their lives for them to be who they are today. And so that's my take on it. Everybody has a different opinion, but like I said, at my age now, my family and I have been through, I feel no compunction to hold my tongue or just go along and get along with people who I know are not doing what they're supposed to do.
So with that in mind, what are your thoughts on the allegations of a cover-up by the state's attorney office under Glenn Ivy? Do you believe that it was a deliberate effort to secure a conviction at any cost?
Absolutely.
How did that work out for you?
Oh, it's absolutely deliberate. Let me tell you how it's deliberate. That the lawyers who prosecuted me, Joseph Wright and William Mumau, they called my attorney a couple of weeks ago, right? They're no longer state's attorneys. They called him and asked him to drop the case because we're filing paperwork next week. They said, don't open that back up because they don't want to go to jail or be disbarred. Because I'm going to the Attorney Grievance Commission, and Ms. Braveboy has the documents that show where they forged the names of Robert White and Brandon and Marilyn Clark as plaintiffs in that $400 million lawsuit. Mr. White and Ms. Clark says they never signed any such document, and they said that under oath. It's in the transcript. When they were asked about it, they said, well, we're not suing anybody. We don't know anything about a lawsuit.
How did your legal team uncover the key pieces of evidence that weren't initially presented? Because certainly that provided challenges for you.
I hired a guy named Vincent Cohen. I'm gonna tell you, this is gonna blow your mind. I hired a guy named Vincent Cohen who called my house during the time of this case was being investigated. He told me that he was a former U.S. attorney, a defense attorney, that he knew I was innocent, and to hire him and to fire my current attorney named Michael Worthy, which I didn't know any better. So I said, okay.
You said Michael Worthy was your attorney?
Michael Worthy was my first attorney, my original attorney, a couple of days after the shooting, a former state's attorney. He said he knew what to do, so I hired him, just like that. Cohen calls and says, hey, I've got more experience. I've done murder cases before, blah, blah, blah. Hire me. This is crazy. You're innocent. Unknown to me that Vincent Cohen and Glenn Ivey used to work together in the Justice Department. And the other friend, Bossman, was a godfather of Ivey's children. That, ladies and gentlemen, is corruption to the highest level, where you're using an attorney as a plant to give to me, right?
So let me ask you. Is his name. So, okay, so there wasn't a disclosure of the conflict of interest.
No, there was not.
So this is documented as part of the investigation?
Yes, Miss Braveboy knows about it. Miss Also Brooks knew about it. Mr. Ivey knew about it because he's the one who sent the guy to me, right? Was his friend, his buddy at the Justice Department, Vincent Cohen. My wife has called Vincent Cohen over 200 times when I was in prison, and he never returned one of her calls after I was convicted.
Okay.
Not one.
Now, is Jonathan coming on?
I don't know. I'm texting.
He said that he was, but I know that we are short on time.
But did you just call him? You called him,
and we're going to get ready to play the Calvin interview.
Right?
Yes, ma'am. I called him, and I don't know because he called me.
He actually just joined us.
Okay.
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
So I need to get him set up.
And so he can speak to any issues you have. I can speak to him, but he can speak to him also.
Yeah. Hey, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you for being on. I know you had court this week, so it's definitely been a busy week, huh? Yeah, I definitely understand. I'm getting you set up right now, so just give me 1 second.
Okay. Jonathan, can you turn your sound up? Yeah, you're kind of faint.
Okay, let me turn that.
Well, it won't be him. Turning his sound up.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's something I have to do on my end.
Mr. Producer has to do it. So while he's doing that, Keith filled us in.
Okay.
Gave us some background. He shared some of the information about different parties involved from the state's attorney's office and what Georgetown conclusion was with their investigation.
Yeah, the first thing I want to do is I want everybody to go to oneinnocentman.org. I want everybody to go to oneinnocentman.org. And I think they did a tremendous job of laying out what happened in Keith's case.
Yeah,
on that
we actually
website.
Played that a little
The
earlier.
other thing is there's a small video that's on there making of an exoneration.
I definitely want to ask some things about this because there were, when you and I first connected to when you said that you want to come on and have this discussion, you said that there were some prosecutorial misconduct, and I wanted to wait until you got here so that you can maneuver the legalese. How did the discovery process or lack thereof affect the ability of Mr. Washington to defend himself? To have a proper case.
To do what himself? So the way that the criminal justice process works is typically, and it's just, this is how it works. The police will investigate a crime, and they will turn over their investigation to the state's attorney's office to prosecute the crime. Everybody's seen Law and Order, and during Law and Order, they have this introduction to police investigate the crime and investigate, and the lawyers prosecute the crime. In Keith's case, when the investigation took off, one of the things that was done, and it's a known fact by almost all parties who've been associated with this, is that the prosecutors removed the lead investigator in the case after the lead investigator started developing facts that were contrary to a narrative that had already been adopted by the state's attorney's office. So the investigation was going in one way, and that way would not prove what the things that had already been put out in the media and the things that had already been adopted by the prosecutor's office was. And so when they removed him from the case, when there were facts to the contrary, the justification that we have recently gotten is because that prosecutor was removed because they were quote unquote covering for my client, Mr. Washington. And so the first act of prosecutorial misconduct and is essentially interfering with an appropriate investigation. And by interfering, I mean you can make an investigation come out the way that you want it to come out if you interfere with the investigators who are doing it. If you remove investigators, if you tell investigators to only bring me this or only bring me that. There's a book that I have that's right here on my desk. It's called Prosecutorial Misconduct, and it's by Joseph F. Lawless. And in here are numerous examples of the type of prosecutorial misconduct that educate lawyers like myself, because if you don't know, you just don't know. And so once you start realizing what has been done and what's deemed inappropriate, you can have an eye for it. In Keith's case, the first issue was the investigation not being left to mature naturally and having members of the state's attorney's office under Glenn Ivey interfere with the investigation. Then, after certain facts came out during a civil trial, instead of people righting the wrong at that time, they bit down hard on it and continued this cover-up. And this is not Jonathan Newton's opinion. This is something that is known by the people who conducted some of the investigation with Georgetown, and this is something that is known by other people who have done independent investigations
that
as well.
Opened this up.
Not at this, well, of the civil case. So here's what happened. When Keith Washington was criminally prosecuted, within 7 days after the shooting took place, there was a $400 million lawsuit filed on behalf of the decedent and behalf of the surviving, I don't call him a surviving victim anymore. I call him a surviving state's witness. And what happened now, just that very fact alone right there, okay? What civil lawyer would ever file a $400 million lawsuit 7 days after the shooting before any of the facts have been developed in the case? Now, another important fact to know is that it's known and it's been admitted on the record that this particular lawyer who did this forged the name of forged the signature of one of the participants in the lawsuit to a retainer agreement and said that he represented that individual. And then it continued to move forward. So now the civil lawsuit is going. The criminal prosecution is going. They were able to secure a conviction in the criminal prosecution, and the civil lawsuit was taking place over several years. And what happened was Mr. Washington got his own independent attorney to defend him, and the county had an attorney to defend them. The civil attorney who did the defense for Mr. Washington during a deposition, and a deposition is a sworn interview with the surviving witness, that particular attorney got that individual to acknowledge that he perjured himself during grand jury testimony, perjured himself during actual jury trial testimony, and the only people that he had talked to prior to Mr. Washington being indicted, he didn't talk to the police because he lawyered up, but he somehow or another skipped all of that process and ended up in front of a grand jury testifying to facts that he would later refute even himself. But the only people that he talked to prior to his grand jury testimony were prosecutors led by Glenn Ivey and his team. And so they were then able to secure an indictment against Mr. Washington and could proceed to trial. Now, they then proceed to trial. They get the conviction. The civil matter is still pending. And after the civil matter comes to an abrupt conclusion where essentially they found that this is what's really crazy. The standard to convict someone in our courts is beyond a reasonable doubt. It almost naturally follows that if you achieve beyond a reasonable doubt, that you automatically should achieve by the preponderance of evidence that certain things are done. That happened in the OJ case. He was actually acquitted in the beyond the reasonable doubt standard, but found guilty on the civil standard. In Keith's case, he was convicted in the criminal case,
dismissed,
but found not liable in the civil case.
It was all perjured and falsified evidence. And then we had them state on the record in the transcript that the case against Keith Washington was without any legal or factual merit. And that Judge Sean Wallace concluded the same thing after they heard Mr. White's testimony, his confession, that he was coached to lie by Glenn Ivey, William Mumau, and Joseph Wright.
Can I ask a question?
Before you do, Tanya, I definitely want to ask something about it because go ahead. I'll ask after you. Go ahead.
Okay, so and I'm sorry because I had to take a call real quick. The civil case was concluded before the criminal case?
After.
Oh, is that
after? Year and a half after.
Okay.
I was in prison, brought back from prison for the civil trial.
No, after.
And Mr. Newton, can you explain what you believe were the key failures in the discovery process during Mr. Washington's trial? Because there had to be some critical evidence withheld, as we discussed earlier with Mr. Washington. Can you go over that?
Well, everybody knows this case to be a case of Marlowe furniture delivery men, and that's these Marlowe furniture delivery men came to Keith Washington's house, and this shooting occurred. Well, the first thing that's not really truthful is that they were not employed by Marlowe Furnitures, and the surviving witness was never employed by Marlowe Furniture. The way that became known was later on. But what was presented to a jury was that these were Marlowe furniture delivery men. And in fact, what happened was the owner of the truck had a contract with Marlowe Furniture, and he picked these people up and essentially put them on the truck. Marlowe Furniture then subsequently settled a lawsuit with Mr. Washington because those people were not supposed to be in his house. And one of the people that was in his house had a record that would have precluded him from working in that capacity.
Mr.
And that
White
record was extensive for
at the time he had 27
what was the exact
arrests,
charge against Mr.
11
Robert White?
convictions. He was convicted for sex offense. He was convicted for armed robbery. He was convicted for 2 burglaries. He'd been convicted for peeping Tom. He'd been convicted for drug possession and something else. And he had been to trial 16 other times that evidently he beat, or the charges were dropped or whatever along the way.
And his criminal past was not presented in the.
Mr. Ivy had that, Mr. Moomout, and the two prosecutors had that, and they made a motion to Judge um, uh, Michael Whalen, uh, who's who,
Whalen.
right, who's an old time redneck.
The judge denied
yeah.
the presentation of his criminal record. And that became an appealable issue, right? That should have reversed the entirety of Keith's conviction. However, the appeals court held that it was not properly preserved, and therefore they could not hear that issue. I believe the sitting U.S. attorney for the state of Maryland is the one who argued that appeal.
Jury's out on his,
on behalf of Mr. Washington. Am I right?
Can I ask one more question? Okay, so that evidence was withheld, but what about the evidence that they did not work for Marlowe's Furniture, and that Marlowe Furniture
Marlowe's Furniture, through Lieutenant Walls, the lead investigator, had given Walls a statement the very next day that these
but it wasn't entered into evidence during your criminal case.
In my trial, they lied about it, said that they were employees. They let him get on the witness stand in the grand jury to say he was a Marlowe employee. They let him get on the witness stand in the criminal trial to say he was a Marlowe employee. I was fraudulently indicted in the grand jury by the perjured testimony that they used. Then I was convicted in the criminal trial by the perjured testimony they used. That Marlowe's had told the state's attorney's office one day after the shooting, we don't know these guys and we don't know how they got on our truck. They then did their own investigation and fired Mr. Robinson, who was putting these people on his truck. Like I said, they were doing burglaries, casing houses.
Right. So they suppressed this.
Yes, they did.
And Marlowe's Furniture settled with you.
Yes, ma'am.
Washington.
Yes, ma'am.
And that wasn't enough to do a reversal, Jonathan?
They don't. Listen.
So we believe we have enough to. This is almost. It's crazy that we're here, because there's enough information that would cause any reasonable lawyer who's looking at this to say that they should have no faith in the integrity of the conviction of Keith Washington. When Georgetown did their assessment, that was turned over to the state's attorney's office. They, in October of 2022, a 39-page document essentially summarizing all of this was sent to the current sitting state's attorney, and had been sitting for, that document had been sitting left up until the time when I was hired in the case. And essentially, it has been sitting since October 2022. October of 2024, we sat down and we began trying to finish this off to see if we could get the state's attorney's office to, and we're awaiting the conclusion of their investigation this week. I'm told that there'll be an update to that, and so we're cautiously optimistic that that they will do the right thing. Certainly, there's enough there. I'll tell you another salient point that I think really adds a lot of context to this, as far as perjury is concerned. Everybody knows the process in Maryland. You can go down to a district court commissioners. Most of them are open 24 hours a day. And you can fill out an application for a statement of charges for people. It's done all the time, like swear out a statement, and people get arrested behind those. On two separate occasions, while Mr. Washington was in jail, his wife took the perjured testimony through the transcripts and the statement that was done in the deposition and presented that to a district commissioner. And the district commissioner found that probable cause existed, that perjury was committed. Then under one administration, it was the Alsobrooks administration, Joseph Wright himself had called the floor after they found probable cause was there that perjury had been committed. It was passed to the state's attorney's office to prosecute this. On the day of that trial, Joseph Wright, it's purported that Joseph Wright contacted the assistant state's attorney on the floor in the well and said,
and what does that mean?
Null pros
Well,
that
let
case.
me help.
That case was null pros at that time. Now, the second time that
if I may,
that means that they're
while I was
choosing,
in
they're
prison,
exercising their
my wife
prosecutorial
took the
discretion
evidence
not
that
to
we had
move
that had been
forward with the
gathered,
case.
right, through my second attorney, Daniel Karp and others, to the commissioner of all this perjured and false statements and everything, 81 perjured statements. The commissioner issued a warrant for Robert White, a criminal summons for his perjury in the grand jury, which is how I was falsely indicted and brought it to trial. He said, this is all perjured testimony. Mr. Washington should be free based on the evidence I'm looking at, an independent commissioner. He forwarded those documents to the state's attorney's office. They were now going to prosecute Robert White for perjury. This in 2010. I would have been released from prison in 2010, December 2010. Joseph Wright, the guy who prosecuted me, right, who took the bribe, I'm going to say it out again. He took a bribe to prosecute me, authored by Glenn Ivey. He then found out that this other state's attorney was prosecuting his star witness, Robert White, for perjury against me that sent me to prison. He asked her as a favor not to prosecute Robert White into what's called null prosecution, meaning drop the charges, which she did the day of the trial for him to plead guilty or innocent. I would have been released from prison that day or shortly thereafter because his testimony that indicted me was fraudulent. He's the only witness the state had. She dropped it. She then talked to my wife and Michael Worthy after the hearing, and asked her, why'd you drop it? She said, well, this Joe Wright called me at home. I don't know him. I know he's a colleague, but I just did him a favor. And then they told her the gravity of what she just did. She was very calcitrant. She said, I did not know, Miss Washington, that this is what that case was. I thought it was just a regular case. So he fooled his colleague to dropping the case. That is a crime. Conflicts of interest, obstruction of justice, malfeasance in office, right there, by him and by her for doing him a favor. You can't do favors in the law and dropping cases because somebody asked you for a favor, because it would have implicated Joseph Wright in suborning of perjury. Which is a crime also. Now,
and during your 13 years in prison, what kept you going?
The ability to get out, get back home to my family. Listen, I'm a country boy. We've been through hardships all our life, right? As Black people, right? Some of us just ain't gonna give up. And I can say that, we grew up in I always wanted to help prison. Prison to me was the worst experience of my life.
Yeah, it had to be, especially going from law enforcement. Putting those individuals inside of,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, listen, people don't realize, the unmitigated violence in prison is wolves in their sheep. Is raw and uncut, and so you get the correctional officers are criminals. I'm gonna tell you like that. More drugs in prison than they're on the street. They bring them in every day. The gangs run the prison, and it's like I say, unmitigated violence 24/7. And so you find yourself caught up for anything, anytime, anywhere, because that's just the way it is.
And are they sanctioned by the correction officers, the fights
Absolutely.
as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen.
So, Jonathan, at this point, what is next for Mr. Washington's case?
In October of 2024, we sat down with the state's attorney's office and we started asking them to consider filing a motion to vacate the conviction. We believe that investigation, I'm told, we've met with them twice during the start, and then we got an update. And I was told about 2 weeks ago that this Friday we should expect something. And so we're waiting for that answer to come. We're hoping that the office itself finds that there's no faith in the conviction of Keith Washington. We're also preparing to move forward with a petition for post-conviction relief should we have to on our own, which is our own pleading and filing with the court should we have to. Mr. Washington is also considering his rights to seek criminal justice by contacting the certain law enforcement agencies of the federal nature to be able to seek justice in that way. Prior to this administration that's currently in the office, there was almost no way that anybody was going to do anything for him. Again, we're still optimistic that Ms. Braveboy will do the right thing on behalf of Keith. We were
certainly
told
election season, so hopefully, you know.
And
let me ask you, let's say that that does not happen. Can this go? And it sounds like the appeal courts don't want to take it. So would this go up to? Could it go up to the governor?
So convictions aren't something. I mean, the governor can issue pardons and clemency. What Mr. Washington is looking for is a vacating of the conviction. You know, Mr. Washington participates with the Atlanta Braves during their training camp, but Mr. Washington cannot go on a high school or middle school baseball field to coach our kids. It's truly a shame what happened to him, and the people that are in office that have the ability, the power, and the obligation to do this simply have not acted up until this point. What we're going to do, and one person, Mr. Wright, I want to say hi to you. I hope you watch this. When I started advocating on behalf of Mr. Washington, he told me that I was crazy, and that they were going to stay stuck. You know, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm crazy. I'm going to go as far as the Lord allows me to go with Keith to be able to help him get justice for this. We believe in his case. We believe that that conviction should be vacated. And anyone who really is a person of integrity would agree with that. When Georgetown did what they did, the gentleman who writes the book on criminal procedures, his name is Byron Workin. Byron Workin actually met with Glenn Ivey and said, "Hey, you know, let's do the right thing here with this." Byron since passed away. He's known as Professor Byron Workin. He's since passed away, and nobody at the local level has taken any action to right this horrendous wrong. And we're just going to keep pressing. That's what we're doing now. We're getting ready to go on another ready. We're actually probably go on WPFW within the month here. We're starting an organization called the National Association Against Prosecutorial Misconduct, because I started in the police accountability space. What happens a lot of times is that prosecutors really aren't held accountable for this type of stuff. And, you know, all right, I appreciate that. Mr. Washington is, you know, when people see my clients, sometimes they, man, he's really, you know, he's excited. You know, man, I'm telling you, he's calm. You know, he's a very accomplished man too.
Wrap, I want to ask
the picture that was painted of him was that he was, you know,
wild
and out of control. That's an individual.
No, I was 5'2" and 106 pounds in high school.
At 18, okay. How tall are you now?
I'm 5'9" and 180. When I finished basic training after 12 weeks, after 12 weeks of eating solid food, meat and potatoes, and exercising every day in basic training, I grew 7 inches as an 18-year-old.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay. Because I was getting ready to say, and I don't know if you remember me, Keith, but I remember sometimes we would be out there playing baseball with Jack's team.
Right.
And you would come out there with your suit on.
Right.
Baseball, running around the bases with your dress shoes on. But I just want to, one last question of Jonathan, because.
Short question.
Yeah, I know, because we still have Calvin's video. So the focus is vacating this conviction and not really a pardon, because and it sounds like with all the evidence that you have, it should be vacated. Is that correct?
So unquestionably, it should be vacated. And so the people who have the ability and the power to be able to file the motion, which we would join, could do that. And there should be justice delayed is justice denied. And, you know, I don't care if it's political season. No man should have to wait for justice, you know, because of a political season. We should be able to get that the moment that we show enough proof they get it. And I think that
because that's a part of the democratic process as well. So I definitely want to get you all some justice, and we appreciate and thank you all so much for coming on our show. We'd love to have you back, you know, to keep us abreast of how everything is going, and best wishes.
And we will definitely post the link on our page.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yes, 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 and thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of your night. Take care.
Thank you.
Praying for you, Mr. Washington.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We are truly leading the fight, to get accountability in our county, and by having these conversations, that's a part of that, bringing awareness, because we can't do this alone. And speaking of doing things alone, democracy and all the other jazz, we are going to go ahead and get ready to play the interview with Calvin Hawkins. Stay tuned because this is a good one. Welcome back to our special election series, where we take a closer look at the candidates vying to shape the future of Prince George's County. Today, we're joined by the People's Champ, at-large Councilman Calvin Hawkins. With decades of experience in county government, Mr. Hawkins brings a unique perspective to the table. We'll explore his vision for the county, his track record, and how he plans to lead if he is elected county executive. Let's dive into the questions that matter most to Prince George's County residents. Hey, sir, how you doing today?
I am doing well. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you so much for joining. So I like to start off with some icebreakers. And I just want to say, how about those Commanders? I know you're a huge fan. Hail to the Commanders. Did you get a chance to watch the game yesterday?
Actually, I was out at the hospital with one of the volunteers who worked on the campaign with me. I got in for the last 8 minutes of the game. I was listening to it on my way home on the radio, but I saw the last 8 minutes, and even that kept me on the end of my seat.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it sounds like it was a good one. I'm sorry to hear about your volunteer. Perfectly okay, and hopefully you're ready to tackle some tough questions like the Commanders tackled their opponents.
Hey, I knew coming on with you, Mr. Hardy, it would be very difficult questions and questions that the citizenry would love to have answers to. So here we are.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And if you could leave a time capsule for future generations, what is one thing you would include to represent Prince George's County today?
Well, I will leave a time capsule that at a transformative moment in this county, I was a part of the leaders and the citizens who built 14 brand new public schools within 6 years.
Awesome, awesome. And the two of us share a common inspiration, Jesse Jackson. Jackson was known for his ability to inspire action through his words and deeds. What specific moment or speech resonated deeply with you, and how has it motivated and guided you in your career?
Actually, I was a young man in junior high school, and Reverend Jesse Jackson would come to 19th Street Baptist Church and preach. I knew him in Operation Push. And I thought when he was saying, I am somebody, and growing up in Glass Mountain in a single parent household, he kind of inspired me that I could be more than the neighborhood and the conditions that were mine as a young person growing up. I thought that was the most profound speech on my youth. But when I heard him give his first speech at the Democratic convention as a presidential candidate, that was it.
That's phenomenal.
Yes, that was it.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to see Jolene Navi out there? She said she was a huge Jesse fan as well. She said she volunteered.
She may have been out there. I was watching it from a residency that I had no control over while I was there. It was because of my actions. I actually watched it from the chapel in Lorton Reformatory, Lorton Prison. I worked at the chapel, and I watched it there that night as he gave the speech. So her conditions were a little different than mine.
Awesome, awesome. I do understand. All right, leaders often draw inspiration from stories, ideas, or lessons in books that they read. If we were to peek into your nightstand or in your Kindle, what book would we find, and how is it shaping your perspective on life?
Right now it would be Marion Barry, Man for Life. Having the opportunity to read that book has given me a great perspective and allowed me to think about what public service is all about. And that book has gave his whole life and how he became the mayor of DC from his days at SNCC and traveling and organizing to his time as a school board member, council member, the mayor. And it was just an exciting read to be inspired about how we can help people. And getting back to Reverend Jesse Jackson, to hear Reverend Jackson's eulogy of Marion Barry, all that ties into the book you will find on my nightstand.
Awesome. Okay. And economic disparities remain a concern in the county, especially in the central and southern regions. What specific strategies have you proposed as a council member? And if elected, how would you execute them as an executive?
One having grown up in Oxon Hill in a Glass Manor, Glass Manor is one of the most challenging communities in our county. And it, for me, is a test case on what can go wrong, but also the potential of what could go right. I think one of the biggest challenges with our southern part of the county is our infrastructure. We've built a lot of homes, but we haven't built the infrastructure to address those. I will work with our federal and state officials to address the infrastructure and really hone in on the crime that's occurring in those areas to really build and transform that image, not just for the criminal side, the crimes and everything, but help with how we address what's going on in our public school system in the southern part of the county. And you could very well appreciate me saying that, because I think one of the first times I encountered your public protest and your leadership was when we had that peace walk over in Eastover, and you had a very unique attire on addressing the violence and the injustice that Black people, particularly our young, was experiencing when it came to the justice system. So I remember.
I was dressed as a prisoner. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Many of our residents feel Prince George's County lacks clear long-term planning. What is your vision for the county over the next decade, and how will you ensure progress beyond short-term fixes?
I think if we really allow our planners to really continue to develop plans for how best that we can use the land resources and all the other resources to not only expand economic development, but increase the appreciation and support of our communities. I believe in order to get to that point, and I've been a council member for the last 6 years, going on 7. I believe council has to really take a look at whether we should have land use authority. In other words, whether we should be making decisions about land use, because I have no background in urban planning or anything to address how we should use land in our county and how it should be developed. But we have a whole planning department that are trained and they're professional planners. I believe it's going to be controversial, but I believe if through resolution and referendum that we remove land authority decisions from the Prince George's County Council and put it back, or put it in the hands of our planning department, it will get us to a better place in what we are building, and we could start being more competitive, in my humble opinion, with the region that we're in. It's very important, DMV, where we have Northern Virginia, Montgomery County, the District of Columbia, even Anne Arundel and Charles County, and I dare to say Calvert County. So in order to compete with the region, we have to reconsider how we do things. And I think one of the major ways that we get to being more competitive and having a county that's developed in a way that we all in this diverse community can appreciate, and that is getting rid of the council having authority to make land and zoning decisions.
Okay, thank you very much. And leadership often requires tough decisions. What is the most difficult choice you've had to make during your tenure as a council member?
I think my most difficult decision as a council member was when I voted for the last redistricting initiative that the council strayed away from what the actual redistricting committee had recommended. I think that was my most difficult decision, and I still deal with it and ask myself, was it the right thing? When I did it, it was more of trying to say to the councilman at District 1 and councilman at District 2, the population by the census tracts indicates that the numbers of white people are shrinking and the Hispanic community is increasing, and we should have a district that supports Latino Hispanic winning. But the way it's set up now, that'll be very difficult. I think the way we handled it, and I was the chair at the time, and as the council chair, I take full responsibility how we handled it. I don't think we communicated effectively, and we didn't do enough community meetings to really get buy-in or experience what we did, the level of disappointment with our decision. So that was probably my most difficult decision.
Yeah, I understand. Because along with that, there have been observations regarding your voting patterns on the council. Particularly like have you instances where you withhold your vote until the end, which seems to allow you to gauge kind of direction of others. And this was noted during the redistricting discussions as well, that your position shifted from a yay to a nay. So, critics will say that this lends question to about your decision making, consistency. So you're saying you gauged this or did this because you looked at the census data and it wasn't conducive to the legislation? Like, how can you dive a bit more into your thought process on that, please?
Well, I never told anyone one way or the other publicly how I was voting because I was going through a very serious assessment, and now one council member mentioned that I had promised, but that council member will never say in front of me that we had that discussion where I made that promise. I believe my 6 years on the council is not that I've delayed my vote. I served in the 6 years vice chair of the council and 2 years as the chair of the council. And within the 6 years I've been on the council, no other council chair can say that every vote he or she has moved favorable or unfavorable, they have won. I'm the only council member that have won every vote as chair that I wanted or that I was pushing for. So it's not that I
What about outside of the chair?
Yeah, I would say it's not that I vote from and lead from behind. I lead. There have been votes that I've lost as just a council member, certainly. But I don't think because the way you presented it, that I waver. I don't waver. I know where I'm voting before I even sit down at the dais because I've talked to my colleagues. And some votes, for example, the senior tax credit, and Councilmember Burrows will tell you, when he first came on the council, if you go back and look, I was the co-proposer of that, but I wanted, as a new council member, for him to have a very long-standing, significant legislative initiative as his first piece of legislation, so I took the background. I was with that the entire time. But recently, because the numbers did not add up and the detriment to the budget for how it was one way and we changed it, some council members changed that to another legislative approach that would have been very fiscally impactful on our budget, even though I'm a big proponent of seniors and benefits for seniors. I voted no on that and it still passed. However, then we had to come back and say, we're going to pass this, but we also agreed to work through it to make it fiscally prudent for us to move forward on it. So that's the kind of, if you really delve into my voting pattern, it's not that I vote from behind or I change my vote or I wait to see where the majority is going. I've taken positions against the majority in some instances.
Okay, thank you. And as the sitting member of the County Council and someone with a background in emergency management, you are uniquely positioned to understand the importance of evaluating our county responses to crisis. Why didn't you initiate an after-action report to assess, or have one initiated to assess what services went wrong and what we got right in recent emergencies such as COVID? Without such an analysis, how can we improve our better outcomes in the future?
Actually, I did not, and that's a very good question. I did not have to initiate that. The Department of Homeland Security, along with our health department, because it was a health-related crisis, the health department was the lead, and there has been 2 after-action reports completed on how we approach COVID-19 from the beginning to the end. And if you have not seen those reports, I will take responsibility to make sure you receive them.
Are they on the website? Are they online?
I suspect they are, but if they're not, I will find out why they're not on the
Or where we
website.
can
Because it's a public document, it should be on there. And I'll find out, I'll go and look and get back to you on it. And if it's not, I'll ask them to make sure they place those documents in the public domain.
Thank you very much. Prince George's County has a shortage of mental health professionals. What strategies would you implement to recruit and retain qualified providers to meet the needs of our residents?
I will continue to work with our Department of Health because from COVID-19, we already probably realized we had a crisis, but COVID-19 really escalated the need for mental health advisors and mental health practitioners to be involved. A lot of the health department funding comes from federal and state grants, but I will personally increase the health department budget to address the shortage of mental health practitioners, but I also would expand it to our school system and work with our school board and our superintendent that the money we give them, that they would specifically put mental health practitioners in our schools, because I believe a lot of the bullying and a lot of the other things are going on, that we don't have the right specialists in the schools to address the trauma kids are going through and able to observe it and recognize it and intervene before some of these challenging problems we are facing occur.
Yeah, I definitely heard we're using counselors for the wrong reasons, and but WSAC recently urged residents to limit water usage due to an increase in water main breaks caused by frigid temperatures. As a councilman, what will you do to aid this problem? And as an executive, how will you make changes for the future to impact our county within our infrastructure?
I believe I said at the beginning, that's one of my biggest priorities. It's unsexy. It's not things people want to talk about. Our infrastructure, just like our public school system, we have the second oldest public school system in the state, second only to Baltimore City. Baltimore City, predominantly black, Prince George's County, predominantly black. I believe it's just racial injustice and
The
social
infrastructure?
injustice. No, I'm talking about some of the decisions we've made regarding our infrastructure. But to answer your question, coming again from not just my emergency management background, but also as someone who started in county government in the Department of Public Works and Transportation, I think we are putting a Band-Aid on the challenges with our infrastructure. Now, initially I spoke about our streets and building and expanding for the traffic flow to try to overcome some of the congestion. But I also believe how old our pipes are, that we have to work closely with WSSC to begin sectioning off this county and making the sacrifice and the investment to redo and rebuild our water infrastructure so that in situations like the weather we are facing, because it reoccurs. And I spoke with the general manager, Keisha Powell, believe it or not, just yesterday before it even was announced about the challenges over in Riverdale with the 24 cracks in the pipe that has impacted this entire region. How we can do it, what's a practical solution for fixing this problem over a couple of years? How do we plan financially to address the problems with our infrastructure?
Thank you. And crime has continued to plague our county, at least the perception of it as well. Can you point to any tangible police reform you championed that led to measurable improvements during your time on the council? And how, as a county executive, would you deploy those resources to continue supporting those measures?
Well, I was one of the council members that supported how we approach policing in Prince George's County. And what I mean by that, taking a more scientific, data-driven approach to how we address crime. I think that was one of my biggest things that I will take credit and I'm pleased about. Now, when we get reports, we want to do it, make it data-driven, but also understand that when you're dealing with crime in Prince George's County is a unique situation, especially in the backdrop where more young people are incarcerated or detained in Prince George's County and Baltimore City than anywhere else, and having the highest number of black men incarcerated in the state of in the country coming out of Maryland. How do you deal with that? And I've worked with Chief Aziz and his team because one, and I'll be very clear, I don't support continuously allowing the offenders to create criminal situations where they receive charges and we keep returning them to the community and they keep doing the same old thing. I believe we have to give them the help they need. And if giving them the help they need means changing how we do our criminal justice system, I'd rather have individuals, whether young or old, in a detainment situation and get the help he or she needs than to return them back to the street to create more crimes and prey on innocent people. That may sound harsh, but from my own background and my own experiences and how I believe the criminal justice helped me get a better understanding of what my responsibilities are as a citizen, is something that I believe we can use to help those individuals who are going through the changes and challenges of participating in crime or being a responsible citizen.
Thank you. Yes or no? Given the uptick in school-related incidents, do you believe it's time to revisit alternative schools as a strategy to address behavioral issues and provide targeted support for at-risk students?
Yes.
You cast a deciding vote to appoint Edward Burrows as council vice chair, despite his controversial history. Why do you believe he was the best choice, and how do you defend this decision to residents who view it as poor judgment?
Again, leaders have to make hard decisions, and hard decisions are sometimes controversial. I've had the opportunity to watch Ed Burrows when he was just a student to the Board of Education. I've watched him become an elected member of the Board of Education. I've watched him for the last 2 years as a member, 2.5 years as a member of the county council. Some people say it's controversial, but I say to you and to those who review your
the audience,
interview with me, yes. Ed has a group of members of the council that rely on his leadership, his counsel. Then there's another segment of the council that may not necessarily agree with him. But to get to the unification we need on the council, it cannot be one way. I respect Ed, and I thought he would make a great, effective vice chair. And my conscience supports the decision I made to vote for him.
Okay, and that's understandable. But even with the type of evidence that you have received from constituents and also from other governing bodies, you are still okay with that. You're 10 toes down on that.
10 toes down.
All right, thank you. All right,
hard
so criticism
decision.
is part of the job. You recently went live on Facebook at a water main break after arriving at the WSCC and other responders who were already on scene. While you call this part of your constituent services, some might argue that showing up to an incident already being handled isn't leadership, it's optics. How do you respond to critics who feel this kind of action lacks substance and doesn't genuinely address the deeper needs of the community?
Well, I think when you look at, now we have 10. When you look at the 10 council members, you will see Calvin Hawkins don't use situations for optics to create constituent services. I, believe it or not, was on the scene before WSSC showed up. I was the one, they were already on their way. To put it in context, where that water main break was, I happened to live I was coming from my neighborhood and I saw it. I pulled over along with a county sheriff, a deputy sheriff member. He was trying to direct traffic. What I did was, what you didn't see was, I knocked on doors to let citizens know in that area that they had a flooding water main break. It looked like, I wasn't sure it was a water main break. I wanted to make sure it wasn't just a stoppage, a sewage stoppage. I knocked on doors to let citizens know.
And this goes back to the conversation from earlier with, what we briefly spoke about with the water main breaks for the winter. So hopefully we can definitely get, some infrastructure type bills or assistance from the federal government.
Yeah, but I want you to know too that because that's two great questions you asked, and I promise you, when I speak with General Manager Keisha Powell, I will, with your permission, reference this conversation and ask her to be open, if you're open, to meeting with you to discuss where we go from here. Again, I had the conversation, but she and her team are the experts, and you can hear what I heard on how we get there and even the costs involved. But it's something we need to do. We can't keep, in my humble opinion, kicking the can down the street. But I want to assure you, I didn't show up there just to get my picture. I was out there really helping more than taking advantage of a photo op.
Right, I understand. And by your own accord, And I've noticed, and a lot of people in the community say this as well, that you focus on constituent services, yet critical issues like public safety, budget management, and transparency have remained unresolved under the council's watch. Do you truly believe that your work is done on the council? And why should residents trust you with broader responsibilities as executive?
I asked them just to look at my track record. When you talk about transparency, I've been engaged and a leader in making sure that when there information that need to be, because I believe all the information we deal with is open to the public's review. And I think with public safety, working with our police department, because I'll make it very clear, some people like this answer, some don't. I'm not an expert when it comes to law enforcement tactics. I listen to them again. I support the data. I follow the data when it comes to how we addressing crime in Prince George's County, and that's what I live by. That's what I support. And it was one other thing. He said public safety, transparency, and what was the other one?
It was about budget management.
I believe the budget situation that we're dealing with is a little dire right now, but I trust my colleagues.
It's bleak.
Yeah, dire, bleak, but I trust my colleagues as we deal with this $178 billion budget deficit that we will come up working with the executive branch measures to move us forward in a way that it will, at the end of the day, it won't be as bleak as it is because we'll be resourceful enough without hurting our constituency significantly to come up with some initiatives and thoughts on how best to move forward.
Right, because as a council member, managing the county budget is a core mandate for that role. And, what exactly have you done to address the budget deficit, the structural budget deficit? Or can you point to something that that you put in place or as an executive you would do to ensure long-term fiscal sustainability?
But let me answer that backwards. To say what will be long-term fiscal sustainability is something I will reserve answering because we don't really, and if anyone tell you otherwise, they're not being truthful to you. Until we see how bleak, your term, the budget is, we're just hearing snippets of the county executive team has yet to come to us to present the budget. I can go on past budgets, but we're talking about the current one and moving forward. Until I see the numbers, until I see where the cuts are, until I see, again, you got to keep in mind, we have to remember that the governor just announced last week with the, $300 billion, $3 billion deficit they're looking at. He's talking about readdressing how we deal with the blueprint for education. Until there's so many factors, until we see what the state's doing, until we really understand where the county budget is, I don't know what I'm going to recommend, what I'm going to suggest. But one of the things,
so the spending affordability committee projects a general fund shortfall of $126.6 million for fiscal year 26, and expenditures are expected to outpace revenues, and projections are assuming a 10% state aid reduction due to the anticipated budget shortfall. With the looming reductions on the horizon, what contingency plans would you put in place to mitigate the county's budget and services?
One of the main things would be what we already are recommending is looking at our various agencies and cutting the fat. And right now, that's a 10% cut across the board. But then when you talk like that, you're looking at a snowstorm we just went through where they say they didn't have the up-to-date resources. So again, I'm going to look at everything's on the table for me on how
Well, if we're talking about cuts, are we going to be able to get the necessary services and things that we need if everybody's taking 10% off the top? You know, because a lot of residents are already saying that we receive the less services, you know, out of our neighboring, you know, brothers and sisters jurisdictions. So, I mean, how do we balance that?
No, I agree. First and foremost, I agree with when we say cuts, where there are fundamental resources that impact directly the citizenry, excuse me, I will not support that, but I am open to seeing whatever's on the table. How do we make this budget work and come up with, as you know, a budget that not only you and you one of the most informed individuals, but that you and others can appreciate the work we've done. It's a balanced budget, one way or the other. But again,
Can you give us like an example of the thought process? Because a lot of people don't know what goes on in the mind of a council member or an executive when they're doing the budget and they're facing these hard decisions. What are you looking at, and how do you say, okay, well, I can go ahead and shave $10 off of this?
Normally, the services like social services, I think mostly people look at it and say, oh, we can take some. But when you go to some of the areas that, whether it's food inequity or just services, unemployment, places where we have the most dire need in our citizenry, the most underrepresented constituencies, I'm a strong proponent of not cutting anything that impacts them because they need the resources the most. How do we address public safety again? How do we address that? Do we cut resources for police officers, sheriff department, our fire department? You know, citizens are not going to accept that. So you find it more in your central departments, those that are not directly impacting the services that citizens rely on each and every day. So for me, if we have opportunities to buy significant equipment that we may not need immediately, those are the kind of things that Calvin Hawkins is more concerned with. Not taking away resources that are needed daily and immediately, but finding resources that we could determine maybe another 2 or 3 fiscal years down the road, we could then revisit getting that kind of equipment. And it has to be significant enough that it impacts our budget. You know, do we create a hiring freeze, and do we have enough do we have enough personnel to deal with the issues that are impacting us on a daily basis? Or do we need to increase the number of employees we have in this crisis, this fiscal crisis? Those how, as a council member, I think, because you know we can't cut the school budget. By law, we can't do that. So that's all. And then public safety is the next biggest part of the budget. So where do you make the cuts, or where do you decide as a group? Now, right now we have 10, we may have 11 before it's all said and done. But where do these council members come together to vote in majority to move this budget forward based on what we are presented by the executive branch?
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Mr. Hawkins, considering the environmental and economic benefits of townhomes over single-family homes, how do you reconcile your support for the proposed 2-year moratorium on townhome constructions outside the Beltway?
Oh, well, you know, I want to be very clear. I don't, and you can look at my vote. I did not support, and I don't support a moratorium on townhomes outside the Beltway. And this is where we got to be very, very clear, very open, and very honest. Why is it okay? And we build, by the way, we build more single family homes than we build townhomes. But why is it okay to continue to build townhomes inside the Beltway and not build them outside the Beltway, when outside the Beltway will benefit from the taxes and revenue that comes from building townhomes inside. We either going to be a colorblind, diverse county and not allow the ways of the past to continue to dictate economic development when it comes to our housing stock in Prince George's County. They say build them around transit development places. That's good. But again, you can't enjoy all the green space outside the Beltway while voting to continue to build just townhomes inside the Beltway. That doesn't add up to me, and I'm gonna always fight against that proposition.
Awesome, awesome. Okay. And Mr. Hawkins, that's a wrap. And is there anything else we haven't covered today that you would like to share with our voters and our audience and the voters of Prince George's County? This is your opportunity to speak directly to them. What's your final message as they prepare to cast their votes?
And again, I'm Calvin Hawkins. I'm one of your candidates running for county executive. I think we're at a major crossroads in Prince George's County. I believe after 30 years of serving in this government, from the Department of Public Works to emergency management to working for a few county executives to my role on the legislative side, I not only understand what's going on, but I also care enough for you that you can always know, if you don't know anything else about Calvin Hawkins, that when I'm in the room, I'm going to be fighting for you. And when I'm making decisions, I'm going to be fighting for you. And you can always know you're going to have someone that care enough for Prince George's County to leave it better than I found it.
Awesome, awesome. And thank you so much. And as we close out our segment, we hope today's discussion has given you a better understanding of Mr. Hawkins, his vision and priorities for our county. Leadership is about building trust, making tough decisions, and delivering results for the people. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for more conversations with candidates shaping the future of Prince George's County.
Again, thank you, sir.
Well, that was fantastic. And I know we said there in that video there will be more, but this is actually our final one. Unfortunately, we wasn't able to get scheduled with Alonzo Washington or Aisha Brave Boy. Yeah, so what do you guys think?
Because of lack of effort.
Well, I will say with Senator Washington, it was miscommunication, apparently. I didn't get the email for whatever reason. I don't know. He sent me a screenshot and said that he emailed it. Sorry, but after that, I did try to schedule with them a couple of times, and they said they would contact me this week. But as I told you all the last time, like, I was tired. This has been a lot of work. Definitely, I've gotten to know a lot of the candidates, more than I thought I would, and it's been very interesting. It's been an experience.
Great job.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's definitely been an experience interviewing everyone. And a part of this was a passion for what I wanted to do. When we first started this, my goal is to educate, uplift, and inspire, and also, of course, outside of accountability. But I just want the best and most knowledgeable constituency possible, because I feel like once we elevate, we'll actually grow as a county and we'll get to the promised land. But I'll let you guys go ahead with your thoughts.
We want to educate, not manipulate the voters.
Right.
I guess the only thing that really, for me, that kind of stood out, it kind of a little troubled me, but there's history there. I just think, I understand trying to build alliances. I understand that. I understand that that's important in the political realm. But I think it sends a bad signal when we say we're trying to build an alliance with somebody that we know is not doing things right, any way, shape, or form when it comes into doing policy or whatever for. It's in their mind, they think they're doing it right. And maybe even in their heart, they think they're doing it right. But they're not thinking about the many people in this county that they're harming with their ways. And so I do have a problem with the fact that he cast that last vote for Edward Burrows. I understand him saying that this was it was a strategic move. But, too much has happened to not hold that young man accountable. And as a result, we have even going back from the school board, you have people not holding him accountable, and Dr. Juanita Miller name being dragged through the mud when she was doing the right thing. And even after a judge said she was doing the right thing, then they downplayed it and didn't hold him accountable, even after the judge said he forged a contract. And that's a serious thing to have somebody go from the school board forging a contract to becoming a legislator, and now convincing this council to change a bill, CB 099, to the point that he now has millions of dollars in his hands that he is just dishing out all in District 8. Building academy programs, giving out $300,000 worth of scholarship, cutting grass for senior citizens. This stuff costs, and all this stuff being done, and nobody's connecting the dots. And now we have all the spending, but now we have a $170 million deficit since this new
And Danny Tavares has, Delegate Tavares has said, that the council budget has exploded, from the time that she left office.
Well, so he even said they're following his leadership. And since he has been on the council, there has been an explosive amount of spending on the council. And now we're talking about $170 million deficit that we are in. And it's funny that the council, this is a little off, but the council now is going to drag in, now that we have an acting county executive, they're going to drag in one of her people and grill them about not, plowing the snow, and not drag in the former county executive and ask, how in the heck is Edward Burroughs has access to this impact money, millions of dollars that he's dishing out to all of his nonprofit friends. And there's no questions about that. It is, but that is the most troubling part, to see him feeling that it was strategic to do that because he carries votes. Carrying votes means nothing when he's not doing the right thing, and as being a leader. So that was the most troubling thing for me.
Go ahead, Derek.
Oh, Donna is back.
Donna's back. You'll see. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Their entities are becoming $1 million entities. Their entities all of a sudden are becoming $1 million entities. How do you just turn a blind eye to that? Yeah. I have a problem too with that. You can't turn a blind eye to some things.
That was all the thoughts about the interview with Calvin.
No, I got something to say. I'm gonna let Derek go.
You know LeVon's gonna.
I was trying to just go ahead and get to the next segment. But go ahead,
LeVon.
No, we're not gonna cheat him out of his debriefing. We debriefed everybody else's. Go ahead, Derek. What you gonna say?
Derek, you going next?
I'm gonna keep mine real short for the public. Several of the candidates that have thrown their name in the hat, again, have been on the political scene and sat on the county council during the expeditious spending. And what are they going to do as the county exec to change what they've already done? Some of them that were part of that. It's just, I would again tell everyone to really study each candidate, really to look at the background if you're serious about voting for your county exec. And sometimes it's very it needs to be changed. You don't need to keep putting the same people in the same seats to get the same results. That's all I'm gonna say.
Insanity. I forgot one thing. Sherman, did you get those reports that were promised? Did you ever get those?
No, I didn't.
No.
And I'm gonna follow up, but let me just say this because I did go to college and did get my degree in emergency and disaster management. So my thoughts, so my thought is, as a leader in Prince George's County, Calvin Hawkins, and as a council member, Calvin Hawkins has a critical position to advocate, for accountability and preparedness. And that's why I asked him about, about the after action report and the importance of it is because these reports are vital for identifying gaps, improving responses, and ensuring transparency.
Funding and funding
and funding too, because the gaps are where you kind of figure out exactly where you need to fill in, and that includes having funding in order to have those resources. But and transparency on how our government entities are actually working. Best practices recommend conducting a comprehensive action report within 12 to 24 months after a major event such as COVID, and following up 3 to 5 years later to reassess, the strategies of what it was. However, it took Prince George's County 4 years to produce a COVID-19 after action report.
Wow.
A timeline which is better suited for following up rather than the initial review. So, having a timely after action report is especially critical because where we are in relation to the region, we're in the capital and the nationalist capital. So if there is ever a CBRN, which is a chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, or explosive attack, we have to understand where we stand and where our resources are in terms of allocation, response coordination, and also public health capacity, right? So those things are crucial. And COVID-19 provided a real good opportunity to assess where we stand, to evaluate how effectively we were prepared for a future large-scale event, right? Because who knows what could actually happen being so close to the Capitol. So, but when I searched for the after action report, and I've been searching for a few years, obviously, because this is just my thing.
Mm-hmm.
I found it buried in the 2024 budget. And that was requiring an extensive Boolean search, to even locate it. So, this lack of accessibility and timeliness of it really underscores and speaks to the need for our leaders like, Calvin Hawkins and all the rest of the people on the council to prioritize, clear documentation, and for public accountability, because we need to be assured that we're going to be prepared for any natural or man-made disasters that come to Prince George's County. So that's my thoughts. I know I went on a long rant, but that's just, my background is emergency management, his is, and I just felt like, we need to address the elephant in the room. So I have not emailed Mr. Hawkins back or emailed him to ask him for those documents. I want to give him a little time, but I'm going to reach out and ask for those. Yes. Mm-hmm. We have a lot in common. Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
What was that, Don?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a whole, yeah, that's a whole different thing.
So I'm doing my best to keep my true opinion about the candidates until after our forum.
Yes.
But in transparency, you know, I worked with Calvin in the Baker administration. And I could say something about the emergency preparedness, but if we could put a pin in that and come back to that at the next CAG chat, because I have some other background and perspective on how that can all come together. So I worked with Calvin when he became a special assistant to then County Executive Rashawn Baker. And former mayor of Seat Pleasant, Grant, he gave Calvin and I these accolades in 2017, I think it was, at the Maryland Municipal League Conference, where he acknowledged that we were two of the most outstanding community servants that he had ever met. I mean, the room was packed, you know, all the who's who of Maryland, of Prince George's County municipalities. And, you know, it was a very honorable moment. I really appreciated what Mayor Grant had to say. Now, Calvin has a slogan about Calvin cares. I don't care if somebody cares. My assumption is that you're running for office because you are concerned about the people of Prince George's County. So I say that to say, if he cares about Prince George's County, he would not run for county executive, because he is contributing to the instability of our county. As I testified along with Sherman and Tanya, stay in the seat that the people voted you into in 2022. If it's for you, run in 2026, period. That's my first objection.
They sure they want to run 2 years ago, but there was some brave candidates that did.
Or he should have run against his Miss Arthur Brooks.
And let me, I don't want to cut you off, but only thing I have to say, okay, well, I am, excuse me, I do apologize. I really hope you hold that thought. But I just want to say, because everybody's highlighting problems that are persisting in our county. But the elephant in the room is it didn't just start here.
Right.
So if you felt like you could do a better job and we were heading in the wrong direction,
then why aren't you stepping up instead of talking about you gonna grow on the things that she does? Come on now.
And I've been withholding my thoughts and I'm going to let the public know about my interviews after the we have the debates, you know, because I don't want to be perceived as, you know, tilting one way or another.
But I'm not a host officially. Like the organization, our group is hosting, but Sherman is our face. But I'm gonna say this, because it's all about what he said. 30 years of being up close and personal in county government, and you can't talk about how you handle a budget process. Like you tell me that you don't know what the budget's gonna look like until you get it from the county executive. Jolene did the same thing. Don't blame the county executive, because the council gets the budget and they get to go through that budget. They know what services their people need. So for me, it's less about who's running for office and more about how that translates into the seat. And because I know what I know, I'm concerned. Like, don't tell me that you don't know what you're going to cut, but you know that people need social services, but you can't cut the school system. First of all, social services and family services and the health department get federal, state, and local money more than probably any other entities in Prince George's County government. So that's a 3-tier budget. So we know, if you know what people need, you taking phone calls, give me some stats. Tell me that you have helped X number of people get through this, that, and the other. I didn't hear any of that from Calvin. I don't care that you've been in government for 30 years. If you've been in government for 30 years, you should be able to tell me from whence we've come and where we need to go. I don't want to hear about, I'm not really in a place right now to say X, Y, and Z. And you know that our budget is already a problem because you ain't had no influx of revenue.
We have a comment about the 30 years. One of our
let me just finish my thought. If we haven't had an influx of revenue, then you know we don't have no money. I'm sorry, if I don't have a job right now in my household and I'm not getting any side gigs, that means that we don't have an influx of money and we got to figure out how to make it on what we got. So I need a 30-year veteran of the government to come in with a real strategy. The other thing I want to say is, I agree. I was glad. I'm gonna say something positive. I was happy that he said what he said about the townhouse moratorium and building outside of the Beltway. I thought that was a very balanced answer without me reading a whole lot more into it. I'm gonna give him that on face value. The last thing I will say, oh no, I got two other points. WSSC is a bi-county entity. There are appointees from the county on the commission. Why is that on their agenda? Do they know that we have an aged infrastructure?
Yes, WSSC was actually briefing the council last quarter of last year.
Okay, but he didn't reference that, right? So I don't want to hear about.
They were talking about the meters. They did talk about the infrastructure, if I recall correctly. I have to look it up.
But he was
I'm sorry,
about
at the briefing. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Right. And so my thing is, if we appoint people every so many years, that should already be on their agenda. And we should have a plan in place for how these pipes are going to get replaced. The last thing I'm going to say, which is a kudo, but he didn't walk it out enough, was when he talked about his community of Glass Manor. He's absolutely right that Glass Manor needs attention, just like Eastover needs attention. But why is it that when you drive down, what is that? Whatever it is, when you come South Capitol Street onto 210 past Eastover, going in through Forest Heights and into the MGM, the National Harbor, it looks like hell in a handbasket. So there's certain gateways. The gateways to our county should always be pristine. And so he makes a great point. But it just, when you gonna do it, you ain't got to be county executive. Look at Ed doing everything he won in District 8. So what you waiting for?
Yeah, but he ain't always doing it on the up and up.
But the thing about it is, he didn't just make that vote. They went out of that room twice before that vote happened. It's on video, it's on record. They went out of that room twice, which I thought was completely inappropriate because the meeting was underway. I think at one point they were on a break. And so my thing is just, don't tell me you care. I already know that. Y'all need to tell me some stuff that I don't already know. And I know that I'm not the typical voter, but I'm here to represent the people, the ones that they all say they represent. And y'all better learn to tell people the truth and stop being shallow.
Yeah. And one of our viewers actually said, about that, the fact that he's proud of 30 years in service, and her eldest is 29 years old, and it's been 29 years of a mess. So, she said that, from the time she had her child until now, and, it's so.
I got a almost 32-year-old, so I kind of understand where she coming from.
Who do we have next? Derek or Donna?
Derek went.
Oh, Derek. Oh, that's right. It's Donna.
Oh, wait.
Let me say something. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say he ain't know how to do none of the stuff that the council do, but he gonna take it all away. He gonna take it all away and give it to the county executive to do it. Like, come on. And I hope the paycheck goes away with it too. Okay? If you doing half the work, y'all should get half the pay. Don't miss that. Don't miss that, y'all. What Calvin said is basically the county executive gets to work with park and planning and decide all the development in Prince George's County. Don't miss it.
Yeah, essentially, and I didn't want to comment on the interviews, but just for the knowledge of the public, this is a chartered mandate, land usage, and if you're saying as the county executive, you want to remove the powers of the council. I mean, because you're no longer in that position. You're saying that I don't understand it, so they don't understand it. So when I'm, get to my position, I'm gonna just move it out of your hands altogether, put it under one of my departments, and I'll control it.
While you still don't understand it. Wink, wink.
Well, on that, I will say, you don't always, as long as you understand it, you may not know how to do it, and you just hire expert people. But again, I just want to get back to the fact that, we have to really think about this. I keep seeing all these polls of buyer regret on the national level. People who were like, oh, he won't do this when he gets in office. And now he's doing it. And so folks are now sitting up here crying, saying, I thought he was just joking. When you see things for your own eyes and you see what they are, it just makes no sense to say, but maybe they'll change. Maybe they're a nice person. Maybe all these babies. We have to have somebody that really understands budgets at an executive level. And quite honestly, we just can't play with incumbents right now. I'm sorry, that's how I feel. We can't play with incumbents who have gotten us into this mess and who want to act like they never took a vote, they never put a signature on a line. All of this stuff just happened. It just happened. They were never part of it. And but they say they're going to make things better. Even for the ones who have not come on to do an interview, who have their videos out right now, want to talk about infighting among other agencies. But you don't have no issues with your agency. You can't even keep people employed there. So, and I know that because my cousin went there and went right back out when she saw the confusion. So, I'm not talking about what I'm hearing. I'm talking about what I know. We have to start asking the tough questions. So I really appreciate what you have done with these interviews and asking the tough questions so that people cannot dance around and ask issues and say, I will increase school funding. I will
at least
make
Mr.
sure
Hawkins had the
crime drops. How? I will do all this stuff. How? They never tell you how they're going to do it. They just tell you what they're going to do. And some of the stuff isn't even within the scope of their responsibilities. And they're still saying, I'll do it.
But even with the how, someone who understands the how, to be able to say, well, that does or doesn't make sense,
Right.
So that was, my goal was to, introduce these candidates in a different light, because when we go to places, we never get the meat.
No.
we get the appetizers, and we really need to understand who we're pushing up into higher levels of government, because it starts here, and my goal, whether people like it or not, is to make us stronger and better.
It is,
when people
because
see a
you
Democrat,
are asking,
a representative from Maryland, I want them to be, the best that the cream of the crop. And right now we're not doing that because we're focused on high school favoritism and likability and all that kind of stuff like that. That's really
War
what it is.
buddy.
I mean, if you watch some kind of TV show, this is really what it is. Like
Right.
imitating art, because people are going after the popular kids instead of, the nerds.
People
Right.
say, well, I like
Yeah.
so-and-so, and I don't care about liking them. They don't like me. And the
Right.
ones that like me are scared to work with me because they scared of the people that don't want to work with me. And so I don't care. It ain't about liking nobody, y'all. Please. I was popular in high school. I tell people I was the least liked, most popular person. People didn't like me, but they knew I would get the work done, and I represented my school and my students. And that's what I'm asking for. I don't want somebody who's worried about whether or not they're going to offend the person who endorsed them in 2026. You can't get things done like that. I'm sorry. Like we just ain't. I ain't never broke bread socially outside of having lunch with Calvin. Never had lunch with Aisha. Have had lunch with Rashawn. Everybody know about that. Had lunch with Tanya. Had nice conversation with Alonzo. Who else is left? Who did I miss? Jolene. Never broke bread with Jolene. Just say, hey, how you doing? So it ain't about liking people. I don't know people like that.
Well,
I know the kind of work that you do or the work that you have not done.
And we're going to try to get the bios of the candidates, because I think that's important. I looked at a bio of a candidate and I was like, huh? If I were going for a job for the CEO of a company, because that's basically what the county executive is, the CEO. And if I go for a job of the CEO and they look at my resume and I have had no supervisory experience, nothing on the executive level experience, nothing as far as, and I'm not going to say it has to be education, but nothing of real life experience in an executive position, none at all. Do you really think I would get hired? We have to start looking at that way. It has to be more than I see her in the community. I see her with boots on the ground. I see him doing this, but are they really qualified? We're not trying to find people to head up, some nonprofit agency. This is our county.
And even some nonprofit agencies need skilled, experienced people.
Yeah, but not at you could still be head of a nonprofit, but you don't have to have all that executive level experience that we need from a county executive.
It depends on the nonprofit, but you're right. I mean, let's be realistic, y'all. This is an 18-month gig. We ain't got time for people to be picking appointments, hiring staff. Are you keeping the other staff? Are you not keeping the other staff? Employees don't like this person. How many of the do we even have 6,000 employees anymore? But how many of them actually live in Prince George's County and can vote? That's my question.
And get a W-2 at the end of the year instead of a 1099.
When they always talking about whether employees like this, do you even live in Prince George's County? But it's scary, y'all. I'm telling you.
And one other thing, integrity has to count. I am so sick and tired. We want to sit up here and talk about what's happening on 1600, Pennsylvania Avenue. We want to sit up here and talk about what is in there. He's
refused.
Yeah, and I'm a Democrat. I didn't vote for him, but we want to talk about the convicted felon in the White House, but we got contract forgers sitting up here as legislators. We have people submitting fake invoices for reimbursement running for county council. resigning from the and playing games with our school board elections, staying on the board long enough to get elected with your plots. Because remember, you put your plot on paper and it was circulated, so everybody knows what y'all were doing. But you get elected, and then you go and even go on the board and make a controversial, let me not be disrespectful, you make a controversial decision, and then you resign, and then knowing that you for a whole year you've been sitting up there with all your posters, all your billboards, sitting up here, vote for me, but you didn't put any position. You just said vote me for this, for just elect me. That's right. You didn't put what position you were running for. All this deceitful stuff that's just going on. So, we got to stop voting for people because you think they're their future. You think they're nice. They smile nice. They got a nice Louis Vuitton bag, whatever.
They remind me of my granddaughter, my grandson.
Exactly. And all of a sudden, let me say one more thing. All of a sudden, everybody gets a makeover. Everybody got a makeover. You've been running around for years in the office.
Irrelevant. Let's not do this.
No, I'm going to say this. But you get a makeover, and all of a sudden, you think people are supposed to vote for you. Like, that is not supposed to count. You have not respected your position for the time you've been in it. So it is relevant.
It feels good, to lift yourself up.
No, I'm going to say this. Now you want to do makeovers. So let's stop playing the games with the people and start answering questions. Yeah. Just start answering questions.
But Tanya,
I don't care how you come. Just start answering questions.
But we also need to say to the people, elevate your standards. Mm-hmm. Understand these positions. Don't just go for the okie doke.
Yes.
Ask the questions, do the research. Y'all should be tired. Like, nobody is perfect. Don't get it twisted. Everybody has room for correction. But when people cannot willingly, openly, and honestly say what needs to be said, it's insulting.
Yeah. Well,
this is not their club.
Don't think that you all of a sudden you do makeovers, or all of a sudden you're riding on snow plows and stuff like this. Let's stop with that stuff, y'all. Yeah. Just start answering questions.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to go ahead and highlight the county executive special election debate that we have coming up. It's going to be on Wednesday, February 5th on our episode. We're going to go live at 5:30. I'm going to shoot in around 8:30. And we have Mark Clark, who is a media personality, who will be moderating. I like to make sure everything is, copacetic. And I am a co-host, and I'm going to be joined by Courtney Finkley Green, and she's with the South County Democratic Club. And, these are some of the candidates that are going to be on. We can't wait to have a good, robust conversation and discussion of issues, because that's how we figure out who's going to be the strongest candidate. We definitely watch debates when it comes to presidential elections. This is ours. This is scrimmage. So we want
really a debate?
I hope so.
I mean, you've been planning it, so I hope that it's really a debate. This Marcellus Cruz, who he was running for the Senate seat too. He's a Democrat.
He's registered for a Democrat at this time.
You said at this time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. At this time. So I just want to say
questions. I want questions asked about the office. That's all. I just want some valid.
There are definitely some about that. And the reason why they're asking that is because nobody sees the questions, even for the interviews. There was input provided by different people, on our team. And also, in order to research candidates, I did, search out and seek out elsewhere to people who know these candidates, intimately, or, not so intimately or whatnot. And as far as the debate, that it's the same way, they provided input. I did research, myself and Courtney came up with some questions, and the moderator is going to ask them. And so, they said that they want a robust debate as well, and Mr. Mark. So hopefully that's what we will get. And I am going to close out because we have stretched far much longer than we thought we was. We know we had some technical difficulties a little earlier with sound with one of our guests. But did anybody have anything, last remarks, briefly, 60 seconds before we close out?
No.
All hearts and minds set. All right. Well, that's a wrap on today's episode. And thank everyone for joining us on our special election series. We want to thank you and say tune in for our critical conversations. Your engagements keep us and this platform going. We appreciate your encouragement. You always make sure that it's alive and meaningful. All of our interviews will be uploaded onto our platform, on the group, and also a page. Yes, we do have a page. It's underutilized, but we're getting that together. But again, thank you all for your viewership and enjoy.